Hello again, this is Figueroa, and welcome to the second part of the third lesson. So in this video, we're going to focus on the graphing part. So that doesn't mention it on the objective, but in this video, we're going to be looking at the graph, including amplitude and midline. So let's get started. So remember in the last video, we talked about the amplitude and the midline. So that's going to be important for this lesson. If you notice, there's nothing in front of the sign. So that tells you that your amplitude is going to be 1. And then your K value is at the end. So that's a +2. This tells you your K is going to be 2. And remember, K is your midline. So this K is going to be your middle value, and it's a +2, so I'm going to go up. This is 1, 2. Sorry, my pen, I got a new pen, but it's not any better than my previous one. So this is a 2, 3, and 4. And I'm only going to be working on the positive y-axis, so I'm not going to do anything below the line. Okay, so again, my midline is going to be an x = 2, so I'm going to go draw a dashed line for my midline. Let me change this to dashed, just to kind of give me a reference to where that's going to be. And that's, you can't see that very well, so let me make that darker. Add k = 2, that's my midline. And notice I drew a dashed line. That's because that line is not really there. It's just a guide to help you, okay? So now it's like we're pretending like that dashed line is our x-axis, just like we had before, okay? And then the key thing is here, this is a sine function. So if you remember, the sine function starts kind of at the origin. But because we're not at the origin and we have a midline, we're going to start at the midline, okay? And then it's asking you to repeat for 2 periods. So remember, it repeats at 2 pi is a full cycle. So at the 2 pi, I'm going to also put it at the midline because that's where it's going to be, okay? And then my amplitude is just 1, so I'm just going to go up 1 unit and then down 1 unit. So if you remember the sign, you're going to start going upwards. So the next x value is pi/2. So at pi/2, you're going to go to a maximum. If my pen decides to work, sorry guys, I don't know what's going on with my pen. And then so you go intercept, maximum, intercept, minimum, intercept. But I'm saying intercept, but it's not really an intercept. An intercept is where it crosses the x-axis, but you're crossing the midline, basically, okay? And then remember, you have to go connect them, and they have to be curves. Be careful that they don't look like V's, okay? So that's 1 period. So let's go do the other side. It's going to be 2 periods. So just like it repeats on the positives to 2 pi, this is going to go all the way to -2 pi. And you kind of have to follow the curve. So this is, if you're going from right to left, this is going downward. So then you're going to want to go to a minimum. My pen doesn't work. Okay, there, finally. And then at pi, -pi, we're going to go back to the midline. Oh my god, I don't know why my pen doesn't work. Okay, so we're going to be here at the midline with -pi, and then you're going to go up to the maximum with the -3 pi/2, okay? And then you're going to just continue the curve. So we're going to now curve this way. So this is y = sine theta +2 for 2 periods. So we have an amplitude of just 1, and then the midline shifts the graph up at the +2, okay? So let's look at The next example, we're going to do this one together. So here it says y equals -2 cosine theta plus 2. So this time we have a cosine theta, and then we have a is -2, and then my k value is +2. So I need to start at the midline. So my midline again is at the +2. So my 2 is right here. I'm going to go make my dashed line again, because remember it's not really there. So here's my dashed line at the +2. That's my midline. And then this time I have a cosine. So remember, cosine starts at a maximum, but because this is a negative, that means it's going to be a flip, okay? And then this -2 tells you, so your a is really absolute value of -2, which is +2. So you're going to go up 2, and then you're going to go down 2 from the midline, okay? And then the negative, because this is negative, this tells you this is an x-axis reflection. Okay? And so because normally you would have started at the maximum, you're going to flip it over to a minimum, and the amplitude is 2, so I'm going to go down 2, starting at the 0 here. For some reason, my pen doesn't like to do dots. Okay. And then because we're starting at the maximum, we have to go up. So we're going to go up at the pi/2. We're going to be at the midline. And then at the pi, we're going to be at a maximum. And then we're going to go back to the midline. And then down to the minimum. Okay? So then remember, they're like curves going up, then down. And then it says again, repeat for 2 periods. So now let's look at the opposite side. So now I'm going to go up to the midline, and then continue going up at a maximum. And remember, we're going up 2 units because the amplitude is 2, and then back down to the midline, and then back down to the minimum. Hi, Joy. Okay. Then you're just going to go continue the curve. And you should have like 2 mountain tops. Okay? So this is y equals -2 cosine theta plus 2. And we're repeated for 2 periods. Okay? So again, key thing is make sure you draw your dashed line at the midline. That tells you like that's your center. And then it's a cosine, so that means you should have started at the maximum, but because it's an x-axis reflection, you flip it so it goes to the negative. And then you kind of just go graph it like you normally would. Okay? All right. So it's kind of like you're pretending that the dashed line, the midline, is your x-axis, and then we're graphing it just like we did the first 2 lessons. Okay? So this one's a practice problem. Go ahead and pause the video and then try this one on your own. Okay, hopefully you paused the video. So here's the solution for you guys to check your work. This is a sine function. We have a negative that tells you it's x-axis reflection. A value was -2, which gives you an amplitude of 2, which means you should go up 2, down 2 from the midline. And then your k value is -1. So starting at the -1, that's going to be your midline. And then remember, it's a sine. So sine normally starts at the origin, but we're not at the x-axis, so we're just going to start at the midline. Normally you would have gone up, but again, because it's a negative, then you would have to go down, and then so forth. Okay? Hopefully you got that one right. Now let's look at the next example. So go ahead again and pause this video and then try this example on your own. All right, hopefully you paused the video. So here's the solution. The amplitude is 2, so you should have gone up 2, down 2. Your midline is 1, so you should have had a dashed line at the +1 y value. And then it's a cosine function, and it's not a negative, so no x-axis reflection. So you would start at the maximum, go to the midline, go down 2 to the minimum, and then go back to the midline, and then go up 2 to the maximum. and then you repeat on the other side. All right, let's look now at the next example. This one is a graph y equals -4 sine theta minus 5. So go ahead and pause this video and then try on your own, and then I'll show you the solution. Okay, so hopefully you paused the video. So here's my solution. Mine was off the screen, so hopefully you can see it. Let me scroll up. Yeah, so this one had a negative. That tells you it's x-axis reflection, and then amplitude would have been negative. Absolute value of -4 gives you a +4, which tells you should go up 4 and down 4. And then your midline was at -5, so you draw your dashed line at the -5. I changed my scale to just go by 2s so that I can fit the graph. But even then it was still off my graph. So if that happens, hopefully it's no big deal. In this example, I only had to go like half of the box below, so it wasn't a big deal. So anyways, the midline is at -5, and then if you go up 4 and down 4, that should have taken you all the way to -9, and -1 was the maximum. And then because it's a negative, it's the x-axis reflection. So instead of going up, you start going down. So midline, minimum, midline, maximum, midline. Okay, and then you repeat it on the other side. Let's just try one more example, and then that'll be it for this video. All right, so last example I want you guys to try. This one is y equals 3 cosine theta minus 4 for 2 periods. So go ahead and pause the video and then try this one. All right, so hopefully you paused this video. In this example, again, the amplitude was 3. The midline was -4, so you start down at -4, draw your dashed line. And then the amplitude tells you should be going up 3, down 3 from the midline. This is a cosine function, so you start at the maximum. It wasn't a negative, so you stay at the maximum. And then you go down to midline, minimum, maximum. Midline, maximum. Okay, so hopefully this is making sense. All right, so now for the closure. Let's just skip this one. For closure, it says vertical shift of sine and cosine functions. So the vertical shift of the functions y equals plus or minus a sine h theta plus k, and y equals positive or negative a cosine h theta plus k. When the graphs of these functions shift blank or blank, so a vertical shift, remember it's up or down. The phase shift is k, and if k is positive, k greater than 0 is positive, that means you should be going up. And if k is less than 0, meaning negative, then your k is going to go down. And then the midline, remember that's your whatever your k value is, so y equals k is your midline. Okay? All right, so that's the end of the second lesson. Make sure you watch the 2 videos. So this is the second video. You should have watched the first one first. Okay, so I hope this helps, and I hope you're staying safe.